There is a quiet truth older men carry, one they rarely speak, not because they lack the courage, but because they already know the world will misunderstand it. If you sit with an older man long enough, if you listen without interrupting, without assuming, without projecting your expectations onto him, eventually the truth surfaces. Softly, calmly, without bitterness. It sounds simple. It sounds harsh. But to him, it is nothing more than honesty. I'd rather die alone than date again. He doesn't say it with anger. He doesn't say it with resentment. He says it with a strange, unexpected sense of relief, like a man finally acknowledging something he has carried inside for far too long. Most people hear this and immediately assume the worst. Family thinks it's sadness. Friends think it's fear. Society thinks it's a dramatic reaction to aging, loneliness, or some unspoken emotional wound. But older men know something the world does not. They're not avoiding dating because they've given up on love. They're avoiding dating because they finally understand the cost of it. And not just the emotional cost, everyone talks about that. What they understand now, with absolute clarity, is the cost to their time, their routines, their mental quiet, their identity, their stability, all the things they spent decades building, repairing, and protecting. When a young man dates, he sees hope. He sees possibility. He sees a future he still has the energy to construct. But an older man sees something entirely different. He sees exactly what dating will demand from him. The emotional negotiation. The compromises that chip away at his peace. The vulnerability of trusting someone new. The fear of being used, drained, or misunderstood. The exhaustion of having to explain himself, perform, or impress. He sees how heavy that weight is because he already carried it once. Some carried it for decades, and he is no longer willing to jeopardize the calm he fought so hard to reclaim. Here is the part most people completely miss, especially women. Older men aren't choosing loneliness. They're choosing clarity. They're choosing mornings without conflict. Nights without emotional tension. A home where silence isn't awkward, it's sacred. A life no longer shaped by someone else's moods, needs, or demands. And this truth, is what women fear more than anything. A man who realizes he doesn't need them for peace. A man who is no longer driven by loneliness, desperation, or longing. A man who chooses solitude not as a prison, but as a sanctuary. A man who finally understands that the thing he prized most in relationships, peace, was the very thing relationships kept taking away. Women fear this because once a man reaches this point, he cannot be manipulated by affection, seduced by attention, or pressured by expectations. A man who has tasted freedom, a man who has experienced tranquility, becomes immune to the emotional tactics that once pulled him back in. He no longer negotiates his peace. He no longer bargains with chaos. He no longer sacrifices himself to maintain connection. So when an older man says, "I'd rather die alone," what he's truly saying is, "I will not trade my peace for chaos ever again. I finally understand what my life is worth. I choose myself." This isn't defeat. It's not hopelessness. It's not avoidance. It is liberation. It is sovereignty. It is the first time in his entire life where he isn't living for someone else's approval, comfort, or emotional needs. Older men aren't running from love. They're simply done offering the most valuable years they have left to anyone who might destabilize the fragile, hard-won peace they now protect with their whole being. Because at this stage of life, peace is not just a preference, it's the final currency of the soul. And they refuse to spend it on the wrong person ever again. There is something people consistently forget about older men, especially women who wonder why these men no longer chase relationships the way they once did. Older men have already lived entire lives built on responsibility. For decades they showed up. They provided. They fixed. They supported. They sacrificed. They held families together even on days when they were breaking quietly inside. Most older men never had the luxury of choosing themselves when they were younger. Their value came from what they could give, what they could hold, what they could endure. They were the foundation other people stood on, steadily, silently, with no applause. So when someone tells an older man, "You should get back out there," they have no idea what they're really asking of him. They're asking a man who spent his strongest years carrying everyone else to willingly sign up for another role where he will almost certainly carry more than he receives. They're asking a man who finally feels peace returning to his life to pour from a cup that is full for the first time in decades. They're asking him to restart a journey he already finished long ago. A journey that cost him far more than anyone around him ever understood. Women often interpret his reluctance as fear or emotional avoidance. But older men aren't afraid of women. They're afraid of losing themselves again, because they remember everything. The emotional labor that was expected of them. The unspoken compromises that eroded tiny pieces of who they were. The frustration they swallowed to avoid conflict. The dreams they postponed to meet someone else's needs. The silent endurance that became their default role. Not because their partners were malicious, most weren't, but because society raised men to absorb, to adjust, to endure, to keep going even when it cost them their inner life. When a man reaches 50, 60, or 70, he finally has the clarity to see just how much he gave. Emotionally, financially, mentally, physically. He sees how long it took to rebuild himself after heartbreak, divorce, betrayal, or years of emotional neglect. Young men bounce back. Not easily, but quickly enough. Older men don't. A breakup at 25 feels like a wound. A breakup at 55 can feel like the collapse of an entire identity. So when modern dating tells an older man, just try again, he hears something else entirely. Try risking the stability you fought years to create. Try giving away pieces of yourself you only just reclaimed. Try reopening emotional doors you closed for survival. To him, none of that adds up. Not anymore. Because older men are not operating from scarcity. They're not thinking, I need someone before time runs out. They're thinking, the time I have left matters too much to waste. They've already given their best years. They've already carried the weight of a relationship. They've already sacrificed their own needs to maintain harmony. Now, after decades of giving, they want the years that remain to belong to them. This is the part women struggle to understand and often fear the most. A man who no longer feels obligated to give his life away becomes unstoppable. He no longer bends. He no longer negotiates with chaos. He no longer accepts emotional demands as the price of companionship. He finally knows his worth. He finally knows the cost of peace. He finally knows that giving himself away is a choice, and not one he's willing to repeat lightly. And this terrifies women because it exposes a truth they rarely confront. When a man realizes his peace is more fulfilling than any relationship he's experienced, he becomes a man who cannot be controlled, persuaded, or guilted back into sacrifice. Older men don't reject love. They reject losing themselves for it. They reject reenacting the emotional exhaustion of their earlier life. They reject pouring their final years into someone who may not value them, understand them, or protect their peace. They are not unwilling. They are simply done. Done sacrificing. Done compromising. Done carrying relationships on their backs. They have paid their dues. And now, they want the one thing no one allowed them to have in their youth. A life that finally belongs to them. There comes a moment in a man's life, usually somewhere between his 40s and 60s, when something profound shifts inside him. The world grows quieter. His home grows quieter. But more importantly, his mind grows quieter. For the first time in decades, he hears something he didn't even know he had lost. Silence. Not the silence of loneliness. Not the silence of emptiness. But the silence of peace, calm, steady, grounding. In his 20s, he couldn't hear it. Life was loud. Ambition was loud. Romance was loud. Other people's expectations were deafening. In his 30s, he was too busy surviving, building, providing, trying to make relationships work, trying to hold everything together while pretending it was effortless. But as men age, something astonishing happens. The noise fades. The tension softens. The emotional demands finally loosen their grip. And in that quiet, he discovers a truth that changes everything. Peace feels better than anything he once thought he needed. Not excitement. Not romance. Not the adrenaline of chasing new intimacy. The kind of peace where he wakes up and no one is upset with him. The kind of peace where his presence doesn't have to fix, reassure, or stabilize someone else. The kind of peace where his home feels like a refuge instead of a negotiation table. It's a peace he didn't know existed when he was younger, because younger men never truly get to experience life without obligations, expectations, or emotional noise. When older men finally taste it, it becomes the most intoxicating feeling they've ever known. Not because it's empty, but because it's restorative. Solitude becomes medicine. Silence becomes clarity. Routine becomes freedom. And once a man reaches this stage, something becomes very clear to him. Dating threatens the one thing he values more than anything else now: his peace. This is where women's deepest fear takes root, even if they never say it aloud. A peaceful man is a man they cannot control. A content man is a man they cannot lure. A self-sufficient man is a man they cannot manipulate with loneliness. Women fear a man who finally realizes that solitude is not a punishment, it's a privilege. Because once a man experiences life without emotional turbulence, he becomes incredibly selective about what and who he allows into that calm. When he lived with someone, peace was fragile. It had to be maintained, defended, constantly repaired. Even in good relationships, peace was conditional. It could be disrupted at any moment by mood, misunderstanding, or unmet expectations. But when he lives alone, peace exists by default. Effortless, predictable, stable, and stability becomes addictive. Older men find that solitude isn't nothing. It's where they reconnect with themselves. It's where they breathe. It's where they recover from decades of carrying others. It's where they rediscover passions they abandoned, dreams they buried, identities they lost. They realize something younger men can't yet comprehend. A calm life feels better than a complicated love. He has evenings without arguments, mornings without tension, weekends without obligations, days structured around his own rhythm, not someone else's chaos. To most older men, this isn't just pleasant, it's sacred. So when people ask why older men refuse to date again, the answer is remarkably simple. Because dating feels like a threat to everything they worked so hard to build. Peace is not just emotional comfort for them, it is survival. It is the foundation of their mental health. It is the core of their identity in this final chapter of life. And here is the truth women fear most. Once a man learns the value of silence, he never trades it for chaos again. They fear the man who no longer needs romantic validation. They fear the man who no longer fears being alone. They fear the man who chooses himself, courageously, unapologetically, permanently. Because that man cannot be controlled, guilt, pressured, or convinced to sacrifice the life he rebuilt. Older men don't avoid dating because they're afraid. They avoid it because they're free. And once a man becomes truly free, he protects that freedom with the same intensity he once protected the people he loved. Trust is something young people treat lightly. To them, it is renewable, something they can give and withdraw without consequence. But older men know better. They've lived long enough to understand that trust isn't just a feeling. Trust is an investment, one that can cost years, sometimes decades, of a man's life if he gives it to the wrong person. After love, heartbreak, marriage, divorce, betrayal, disappointment, or even the death of a partner, trust stops feeling like hope and starts feeling like stepping into a storm without shelter. Young men trust easily because they haven't lost much yet. Older men trust cautiously because they've lost too much already. They know what betrayal feels like. They know what emotional neglect feels like. They know what it's like to carry someone who stopped carrying them back. They know the loneliness of being with someone who no longer sees them. They know the exhaustion of explaining themselves to a partner who never really listened. These memories don't fade. They settle into the bones. They become warnings carved into the subconscious. So when a new woman enters an older man's life and says, "Give it another chance," she doesn't understand the calculation happening inside his mind. Dating again isn't just going to dinner. It's reopening old wounds. It's exposing soft places he spent years protecting. It's risking emotional injury that takes exponentially longer to heal with age. A heartbreak at 25 hurts. A heartbreak at 65 can break a man in ways no one sees. A younger man can rebuild in months. An older man might need years he doesn't want to lose again. This is where the deepest fear women carry begins to surface. The fear that men no longer trust them enough to give their hearts away. Not because women as a whole have done something wrong, but because men have finally learned the true cost of letting someone in. Older men also carry a second, heavier fear, one they rarely admit. They fear they won't recover the same way they used to. They fear giving their heart, their stability, their routine, their peace, and losing everything all over again. They fear loving someone who might eventually walk away. They fear supporting someone who won't support them back. They fear sacrificing their final years to a bond that may never feel safe. Trust requires energy. It requires optimism. It requires vulnerability. These are three things older men no longer give away freely. Not because they are cold. Not because they are broken. But because they are wise. They've learned that trust is the easiest gift to offer, and the hardest gift to regain once shattered. So they become selective, almost to the point of appearing distant. They protect their heart not out of fear, but out of strategy. They guard their peace with the same intensity they once guarded their families. They choose solitude over uncertainty, clarity over confusion, stability over emotional risk. And here is the truth women fear most, even if they never speak it. A man who no longer trusts easily is a man they cannot influence. He cannot be rushed. He cannot be pressured. He cannot be guilted into opening himself before he is ready, if he ever becomes ready at all. He has seen too much, learned too much, survived too much. Older men understand that trust given to the wrong woman can cost everything they have left. Their peace, their savings, their home, their stability, their sense of self. And that is a gamble they refuse to take. So they step back. They stay guarded. Some stay single permanently. Not because they don't want companionship, but because they refuse to sacrifice the years they have left to rebuild a heart that may never fully recover again. Women call it emotional distance. Men call it emotional survival. Because at this stage of life, and this is the truth women fear above all, men are no longer searching for someone to complete them. They are searching for someone who won't destroy the peace they fought so hard to earn. Trust is not a wall they hide behind. It's a filter that protects the life they've rebuilt, the identity they rediscovered, and the freedom they refuse to surrender. And once a man learns what his peace is worth, he would rather protect it alone than risk losing it with the wrong person.